Pupil Slicer and their sophomore album Blossom. Pupil Slicer are a band who we have enthused about before on this podcast. Their 2021 debut album Mirrors is potentially the best mathcore album since the Dillinger Escape Plan broke up. Like, I don't think that's a particular sub-niche that always has, A, the most amount of fresh new ideas, and then if it does, B, the actual ability to pull them off in a way that makes coherent sense, thanks to the erratic nature of the music.
I take the last Dow Boys album over it, but yeah, it's up there.
I think Mirrors is a lot more... I like how much more scathing it is than that, but again, I think it hangs together so much better for me. And then when one hits you like Mirrors did, you actually just really feel that. And it was such a violent, kind of spiky album. But we came out of it saying how more than perhaps any other debut album released that year, there were so many potential avenues for them to go down and build something more out of it. Considering we were touting it as that, it's quite something that they've still managed to, I think, stun a lot of people with the shape that their music has taken on Blossom. Because when you were talking about that potential, you might be thinking kind of gradual development more than like the kind of grand immediate leap in ambitious sonic and conceptual waters that this is. This almost feels like it could be a different band.
This is one of the biggest sort of leaps that I think a band like, you know, like Employed Server kind of a band that I think people sort of got a lot of comparison to, like when they came along, like with Mirrors being the kind of like grayer than you remember, and everyone was kind of thinking, you know, they do their Warmth for Dying Sun. That's like a bit of a leap forward, but not like so colossal. This feels like such a vast change in direction, while still being, you know, feeling like a growth from Mirrors. But it feels like they've skipped 2 albums to get to this point.
Yeah, I think like Mirrors, I still think is brilliant. Like anything I'm saying about Blossom, at least myself, I don't mean to do down Mirrors or say that it's like much worse than this one or whatever. I think it's just a different beast, because at least in one sense, Mirrors is an extremely dark, traumatic kind of album. And I like that about it, and that's still a kind of feature particular to that one. If you want an uglier, depressing, kind of emotionally raw Pupil Slicer experience, you go to that one. But where that record is like kind of the sum of, you know, the experiences that brought them to start in the band, writing an album like that and so on, this feels more like the band having gained a bit of a following, having entered the lifestyle of being a band with eyes on you, regularly playing shows, and going, in bigger terms, what can I achieve with my band? What kind of visions can we explore? And it's that kind of ambition that marks Blossom in a big, big way, more so than most records you'll hear.
Yeah, because, like you were saying, Sam, like most bands in this ilk, they take a little while to find what their secret ingredient's going to be.
Yeah.
And on Blossom, Pupil Slicer haven't really found a particular thing the way they're employed to serve. The way they're employed to serve kind of brought in groove metal, or Code Orange brought on industrial, or Turnstile drawing on R&B and those sort of things. With this record, it's like their unique ingredient is going to be 8 different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
doing a bit of black metal, doing a bit of indie, like it's all going to come in here.
I mean, like Katie had been talking a lot in the build-up to the album about the sort of anything goes crazy spirit during the writing of it. Like, this is going to go in here, and we're going to have this thing, and we're going to draw on this. What I like about Blossom isn't actually that kind of off-the-wall craziness, which I think Mirrors, in a way, is almost like the album that shoots off in a million directions. Blossom has a sense of world-building and a particular atmosphere that Mirrors didn't so much have. That was more that kind of, again, expunging of trauma. There's something of just a real focus on this that makes this feel like a kind of front to back kind of package, where the production on it, for one thing, is a lot bigger, quite dramatically so. I think Momentary Actuality has those kind of skull crusher grooves in it with that thick snare that does feel more like it's following the footsteps of, like, again, sort of some of the later Employed to Serve albums for riffs and stuff like that, more than the earlier grind way.
Still opens with a blast of black metal, though. You say that,
like vocally, in the harsh vocals, Katie sounds brilliant, and hearing a voice that kind of bestial on production as like crisp as this is quite novel, where it's really like up there in the mix, but the growl in their voice and like the fucking fry in the throat and everything is so like up close and personal. It's quite legible. There's a brilliant bit about 3.5 minutes into creating The Devil in Our Image where it's just full on like Hox a Loogie, just like kind of
yeah, I know exactly.
But, it really is like, wow, this is like blockbuster sounding, extremely intense, extreme music.
I think that was the thing for me, is I think the production on this record is incredible, that they have gone for something that is really like pushing clarity within the chaos and kind of like violence of it. So, and doing that without undermining the heavy elements. You know, you get sometimes with these bands, they go for a cleaner, more like high level production job, and it makes it sound a bit artificial. Then I don't think they run into that problem, but it just sounds bigger and broader in scope, while still having a kind of cohesive, darker intensity to it.
Well, this is the so Mirrors feels like a bridge collapsing on your head, and this record, it doesn't have that sort of, I wouldn't say ramshackle, but it doesn't have that quality. It's technical and well produced, so it has that blockbuster feel. But at no point does it feel like the savagery has been dialed back at all. And I'm still trying to work out how they've done that. Because just for me, at least, just by virtue of something sounding a bit more processed or pro-tooled and everything being exactly on the money, it's kind of shorthand in my brain for something not being alive, if that makes sense. And yet listening to this, it's that oxymoron of it's able to do all those things, and yet it feels more kind of vivid and, like you say, bestial than the last record. And I still can't work out what the ingredient is that makes that so.
Yeah, I think for me, the first record is the more frenzied, intense one.
Yeah.
But this has, I mean, again, it's got this kind of like science fiction narrative to the record, which, beyond even just a literal lyrical sense, like I haven't followed it particularly closely, but in an aural way, it marks this record as something quite different, because it really feels like this kind of like, you know, fucking Neon Genesis Evangelion, Ghost in the Shell kind of like extreme metallic hardcore experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that what you were saying, Sam, about how the melodies and so on don't derail songs, is because they feel like part of that. Because when the cleans come in on Momentary Actuality, they have this extremely alien sort of feeling that takes a while to get your head around. But the delivery of that melody line is so like strange and slippery, where that's melody, but it's not presentable in a normal kind of way, which I think is very fresh to hear in an era when so much metallic hardcore is so overproduced and kind of algorithmic. And that is still like one of the most obvious kind of bangers on the record. The title track like threw a loop when it come out, and it does a thing here that I've realised I really like when done well, which is it was a single that made you go, what the fuck is this record going to be? But while also still being kind of, you know, a more obvious single, and it's placed at the very back of the album in a way that, so by the time you reach it again on your kind of first spins, when you hit that song again, you have the now filled in context of what the rest of the album has been, and it pays off beautifully, because that sudden burst of like highly emotional tech metal guitar riffing, and then like a snaking alt rock kind of melody, with all of the colour and conceptual creativity that the rest of the record has exhibited, it just feels so right, and like a huge, actualization of that.
That coming off the back of Dim Morning Light as well, which is like, that's a real kind of like heartbreaking, lengthy kind of emotional track, and then you've got this kind of like burst of like, I don't want to say it's necessarily a joyous one, but it is quite, again, a life-affirming, brighter song in it because of these light-footed kind of indie touches, while still having, again, that savagery and aggression of Pupil Slicer. It feels, again, like the real like, okay, this is, yeah, exactly, you've got the context of everything else, and it's that amazing payoff to just end the album on such a memorable high note.
Well, the alt rock thing is, and it's another one of those things where I don't know how they've done it, because that song, or at least that style of music, traditionally speaking, almost the whole point is that it's down to earth. It's almost not meant to be like transportative, and yet it goes back and forth between that and Dark Space. It's a fascinating combo, and at first, I'll be honest, I found it quite jarring, like when it was a single. And like you were saying, by the time I got to the end of the record, that combination makes sense. You have the sort of emotional weight of one ingredient and the ambitious, frenzied, just fury of another in tandem. And the way that they tip the scales throughout the album just makes it so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really intentional embrace of kind of computerized, glitchy sound on this, which complements them so well. I mean, I'm not sure there's been a band who have benefited so much from embracing the kind of technosphere in hardcore adjacent music since Code Orange. Like, it obviously fits in so well with the kind of imagery they're playing with on this record, that, you know, Ghost of the Machine kind of feeling it evokes. You listen to this with good headphones on, and there's all kind of like subtle keys lines and shimmering effects of things and so on. And then there's also really upfront and obvious, like, no tempo switching.
No tempo is mental in how just like obnoxious it is.
Yeah, but it's like switches from those is just like the most dumb, ignorant riff that they have on the record.
Proper knuckle dragging brutality. But yeah, it's a great change to kind of just hit you with that and kind of go, oh yeah, cool, they can still just cave your skull in when they need to.
I mean, the beatdown part in that song is the most like outrageous. Just everything just drop out.
Bass on that beatdown like the bass wobbling all over the place on that beat down is like really mental sound.
I mean,
like,
well,
cool.
the way that the bass freaks out over the kind of dissonant chord part, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a bit. So yeah,
That sounds like Imperial Triumphant for 15 seconds, and I guess it's short enough for it to not be overwhelming for you.
it literally no, because again, I said like that. It is mental and it is like an unpleasant thing, but because it is just in this like burst at the end of this song, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a crazy cool idea that is in the context of something I can find a lot more engaging. But like, yeah, killer.
You've got stuff like Terminal Lucidity, which is like full kind of mathcore ear bleeding, but then it turns as that real shimmering, like from inside the kind of industrial cage kind of atmosphere to it. Departure in Solitude is furious, but then it manages to like balance and veer between those kind of like more emotive kind of guitar textures where you can tell these guys listen to like, you know, black gaze and post-hardcore, all these kind of things. At the same time, hyper digitalized electro beats, and then this fucking nasty as hell death metal riff that just boots the door down out of nowhere. But it's structured so beautifully and so naturally. It's also electric as it goes between it. There's a real... These feel like songs that must have taken an age to construct and really like pay off each element as well as they do.
Yeah, I feel like a song at Creation's End is like the perfect example of how it feels like they've taken so much time poring over. Because again, it's one of the longer, you know, almost like post-metal songs on the record, and with Kate sort of shifting between the sort of screams and clean vocals, and it feels again like obviously there was those longer tracks on the sort of the tail end of the debut, but this feels like them really fully understanding how they were, like how much ground they can cover in a more longer sort of form songwriting. And I think they've clearly taken so much time poring over each element to really fine tune it without it sounding overworked then, and having that problem that say like Avenged run into it. It feels still organic and like done right.
Yeah, I love Mirrors, but the song at Creation's End is not a song that I expected Pupil Slicer to be capable of writing.
It would have no home on Mirrors. Everything on Mirrors was so geared to kind of ugliness.
No, for sure, but I didn't even think it was something that they could have done had they wanted to. Like
I said, even with them doing those 6-minute tracks, you didn't think they had this one in them already.
No, because it sounds like explosions in the sky at points, but then covered by Bloodhouse Nord, and then when it changes tracks, it sounds like Converge playing in Zero Gravity. It's like,
yeah,
it's just songwriting and performance. Again, Mirrors is one of the best extreme debuts of the decade so far, so I was by no means writing them off, but this just wasn't a trail that I thought they could explore this far. And now it's just, the whole universe has opened up for album 3. Because listening to something like that, you go, well, you could do the whole record like that if you wanted to. You've got the know-how to do it, clearly. And as a centerpiece on the follow-up, for me, that was the moment where you're like, okay, special album. Like, not just a great follow-up, but like another league.
Yeah, I think creating the devil in our image before that was a moment where it's like, this is pacing its ideas so well, and it is having a level of sort of emotional dynamism in it with the bass work does this beautiful work in the beginning and stuff, and then when you get to the song at Creation's End further on, it's like another level of that, to have this point in the middle of the record that's like has a several minute build that feels more indebted to, you know, you said Explosion in the Sky, I was thinking like Oathbreaker and Cottle Luna and stuff like that. Again, the bass guitar really allowed to be part of it as well. Like they're a really cool 3-piece in that sense, where everything has a kind of a key role. The way that song holds so much tension, the way it does for, you know, a second shy of 8 minutes, is generally so impressive for a band to be hitting on album 2. Something of that level of kind of class and maturity. And again, the clean vocal that comes in there is so well integrated with those little like flicks upwards it has and stuff as part of the overall kind of ebb and flow and collapse and sway of that wall of sound. It still manages to find a way to switch into that just fucking sledgehammer riff in the second half that pays off so well. But the climb upwards of the blast beats after that, and then that big refrain of "I'm not the only one for whom the flower weeps." It feels like the closest thing Pupil Slicer have had to that like real rallying, the way like a Single Tear by Converge has that kind of like, it's got like a big chant along in the live environment thing, but it's a big emotional climax moment as opposed to, you know, Hatebreed gym music or something like that. Like those sort of moments they're really getting on records like this. And then, like I said, the way the title track then brings it home with like the most sticky, accessible song on the record, but at the same time imbuing that with a sense of like climax and ideas coming to fruition. It's so nice this month of all months to hear a metal record this progressive that is so carefully paced and naturally built throughout, and where the sky is still the limit. There is no shortage of ambition in here at all. And it's obviously extreme, but in a way where people can get it, and it sounds so kind of huge and assured. Like, it's a record characterized by confidence more than it is that debut album thing of just, sort of getting it all out. This isn't like my personal favorite metal record of the year so far, but I don't think there's been one so built to kind of just capture imaginations. Like, it's a record that feels like it's been built to get 5Ks in Kerrang. You know what I mean? It's just like so undeniably impressive.
I think that's it. It's like these sort of bands, they're always really easy. UK experimental, exciting hardcore bands. They're going to get a certain portion of people tongues wagging and the hyperbole pulls up. But I'm like, no, but this is one that actually delivers on that and does live up to that. And again, I'm still so I hesitate like 5K because I'm like, I think that the best is still there. There is so much more that Pupil Slicer can mine from this, and I cannot wait to see again what component they decide if they do want to hone in anything, or if they just want to continue broadening the whole scope of everything like they could do. I think there's something so exciting about Pupil Slicer right now that really feels like this is just the beginning for them.
Yeah, I mean, on the debut, like, don't get me wrong, I've said before, I think it's outstanding, but I didn't expect Pupil Slicer to grow into a band who was sort of a bastion for creativity in their scene. I kind of just counted them as among the great extreme bands sort of coming out of the UK just in the last 5 years or so. With this album, and I think you're right, Sam, I'd be a fool to bet against them again and think that they can't top this next time.
It's like them and Ithaca are like the ones now in the UK that I'm looking at, kind of going like, God, what could you two do if you continue to carry on the trajectory you're on? Like,
yeah, in fact, Ithaca's a great comparison because the Language of Injury I thought was great, and then They Fear Us came out, and I was like, I hadn't even thought this was in your remit. And Pupil Slicer, I was already super impressed by, and listening to this, it was just time and time again going, this was just not what I thought was in your wheelhouse, and who knows what the next part will be. The sky's just opened up even more. And I really think that this is them kind of beyond just Kerrang and that sort of thing. I don't necessarily think they're going to become a massive band, but this is them. They can now compete on the sort of world stage for this kind of thing. I'm not sure there's another new band to have emerged in the last 5 years anywhere who are doing this to this degree.
Yeah, I really think they need to get it together live now to match. Like,
yes,
especially with the production budget that this has, that it feels so kind of precise and well composed. It's a bit weird when the live compartment is so ramshackle. Like, and they've got so much momentum now with this record being so well received. It'd be a shame if the live cycle kind of deflated it for not being like as tight and together as it is here. So get yourself to as tight a level as you are here, because this album is so assured and such a statement of intent. The leap in ambition is like, one of those kind of records that people will talk about. So that's Pupil Slicer and Blossom.